funny. Like, I mean, it's not meant to be funny. I don't know. If it's
But
funny.
he gave a complete story, right? Like you have a story, and then he said, yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. The end of the show. What
The
part
credit,
do I?
maybe she means the
Oh, credit. Gosh. Okay. Should I say Messiah's homeless or just credit?
Credit.
And exactly time. Last week we had like 5 minute rehearsal.
Yep.
It was crazy.
Amidst weed license delays for general retailers, New York State cannabis officials announced today that they'll be doubling dispensary licenses under the state's social equity program. The program is for people with past marijuana convictions and their family members. Licenses will go from 150 to 300. But while the state expands the number of these social equity licenses, it still hasn't set a time for opening up broader licensing programs. Residents in Astoria, Queens are going to have to find a new way to cool off this summer. Astoria Pool will be closed whilst it undergoes $19 million in renovations. The city's Parks Department says the 100-year-old pool should reopen by 2024. But Astoria locals are concerned that the city won't stick to this timeline. When the Flushing pool was closed, 6 weeks of renovation turned into 3 years. New York is also set to have a warmer than usual summer. And on the topic of weather, another
That's
New
it
York
for
City
edition.
storm is brewing.
That's it for this
It's set to
edition
arrive
of
during
Uptown
Friday
Radio.
evening's commute,
We
with
hope
the
you
worst
enjoyed the
weather
show.
coming during the
Our
evening
executive
and
producer
into the night.
today was
There
Trisha
could be up
Stokes,
to 2
leading
inches
our
of
staff of
rainfall,
reporters
and
was
maybe
senior
even a few
producer
more flakes.
Valentina
In the
Zarin.
meantime, you can enjoy the uneventful, partly cloudy weather today.
Okay.
Henrietta McFarlane, Columbia Radio News. Ten minutes.
That's it for this edition of Uptown Radio. We hope you enjoyed the show. Our executive producer today was Trisha Stortz. Leading our staff of reporters was senior producer. Okay. Oh, I think they had up and down something.
Yeah, the fade.
Yeah, the fade, right. Fade low for voices, then play out until exactly time.
My mind here. We stand by.
That's it for this edition of Uptown Radio. We hope you enjoyed the show. Our executive producer today was Trisha Stortz. Leading our staff of reporters was senior producer Valentina Zarin Martinez. Director Izapa Macias coordinated our studio production team. Our producer Elizabeth Erb led our copy team and assisted in the studio. Henrietta McFarlane delivered our local newscast.
centers. They serve homeless youth from the ages of 18 to 24. They provide hot meals, showers, clean clothes, referrals to other programs, and before the mandate, they were a safe place to close your eyes, maybe take a nap. But now, the city says that homeless youth aren't allowed to sleep in the drop-in center.
In Netflix hit romance Bridgerton, lead actress Phoebe Dynevor stands in a dimly lit room. Her powder blue satin dress catches glimpses of light as fire crackles in the background.
I kind of fell into musical theater, but that was my biggest career.
Former Broadway actress, singer, and dancer, Janice Mason.
My first Broadway job was Starlight Express. Then I did Grease for 5 years, and then I did a stint of Dreamgirls on tour, and yada, 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 yada. One night, I just thought, I really can't see. I can't get on stage. I can't get off stage. Although I'm not completely blind, I'm just visually impaired. But that was my biggest career.
Former Broadway actress, singer, and dancer,
I kind of
Mason.
fell into musical theater. My first Broadway but job that was my biggest career. Starlight Express.
Former Broadway actress,
Grease,
singer.
A stint of Dreamgirls on tour, and yada, Starlight yada, Express. Yada. One night, I just thought, I kind of fell into musical theater, but that was my biggest career.
Former Broadway actress, singer, and dancer, Janice Mason.
My first Broadway job was Starlight Express.
You're listening to Uptown Radio. It's Thursday, March 2nd. I am V. Tran. The city has reached a multi-million-dollar settlement with victims assaulted by police during a 2020 Black Lives Matter protest.
And the amount of the settlement is what makes this case extremely significant.
It's the job of intimacy coordinators to make sex scenes comfortable to film. But the role is new, and coordinators are facing challenges on set.
I still go on sets and I'm explaining my job to people. People are nervous around us. They think we're the sex police.
And it's been a bad day for Macy's as it announces its latest earnings. One problem, it says, the size of its stores.
We get lost sometimes, and we work here, so it's like kind of...
Also today, advocates are pushing back on a new city mandate that bans homeless youth from sleeping in drop-in centers. All this and more on Uptown Radio. But first, the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Amy Held. The Justice Department says former President Donald Trump is not absolutely immune from civil lawsuits over the January 6th Capitol attack. In a new legal filing, the department urges a federal appeals court to reject Trump's claims of immunity, as NPR's Ryan Lucas reports.
Trump is facing lawsuits filed by Capitol police officers and members of Congress who are seeking damages from the former president arising from the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Trump has claimed absolute immunity from civil suits based on his, quote, speech on matters of public concern. A district court judge rejected that argument. Trump appealed the matter to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which asked the Justice Department to weigh in on the legal question. In a new filing, the department is urging the appeals court to reject Trump's claim of absolute immunity. It says a president's speech is not protected if it constitutes incitement to imminent private violence. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
A Michigan man is facing federal charges after threatening to kill all Jewish officials in the state. He was arrested last month with multiple firearms. Today, Michigan's Attorney General Dana Nessel says she was among the targets. And in a Pennsylvania courtroom today, a man admitted to packing explosive materials and a lighter into a checked bag en route to Orlando. Neither he nor the bag made it onto the flight. He was arrested at home on Monday. The judge found probable cause to keep him in federal custody. In Walterboro, South Carolina, the defense has rested the fate of disbarred attorney Alec Murdaugh, now in the hands of the jury after a 6-week trial. Defense attorney Jim Griffin says his client may have lied, cheated, and stole from his clients for years, but that does not mean he killed his wife and his son.
Even if the financial day of reckoning was impending, if it was right there, Alec would not have killed the people he loved the most in the world. There's no evidence that he would do that.
The judge replaced a juror with an alternate today for inappropriately discussing the case. Home ownership has grown overall among people of color in the U.S., but as NPR's Arzu Rezvani reports, home ownership rates among black families are lagging.
Homeowners built more than $200,000 in wealth over the last decade, according to a new report from the National Association of Realtors. But a closer look at that number reveals disparities, particularly among black and white families. The gap between black and white homeownership has increased over the last decade. There was a 26% gap in 2011 that's grown to 29% more recently. Homeownership is a key contributor to wealth, and the lagging rates among black families has been detrimental to their net worth. The net worth for a white family is roughly $188,000, 8 times more on average than for black families. Arzu Rezvani, NPR News, Los Angeles.
It's NPR News.
From Columbia Radio News in New York, I'm Henrietta McFarlane. As part of a new mental health plan, this afternoon, Mayor Eric Adams announced the expansion of 3 safe injection sites.
Drug-related death is the leading cause of mortality among people experiencing homelessness in our city. We cannot allow this crisis to continue taking lives and destroying communities.
2021 was the deadliest year on record, with an 80% increase in deaths compared to 2019. There are already 2 sites in the city where people can safely use illegal drugs under medical supervision. Adams wants to see a 15% reduction in overdose deaths by 2025. Amidst weed license delays for general retailers, New York State cannabis officials announced today that they'll be doubling dispensary licenses under the state's social equity program. The program is for people with past marijuana convictions and their family members. Licenses will go from 150 to 300. But while the state expands the number of these social equity licenses, it still hasn't set a time for opening up broader licensing programs. Residents in Astoria, Queens are going to have to find a new way to cool off this summer. Astoria Pool will be closed whilst it undergoes $19 million in renovations. The city's parks department say the 100-year-old pool should reopen by summer 2024, but Astoria locals are concerned that the city won't stick to this timeline. When the Flushing pool was closed, 6 weeks of renovation turned into 3 years. New York is also set to have a warmer than usual summer. And, on the topic of weather, another New York City storm is brewing. It's set to arrive during Friday evening's commute, with the worst weather coming during the evening and into the night. There could be up to 2 inches of rainfall and maybe even a few more flakes. In the meantime, you can enjoy the uneventful, partly cloudy weather today. Henrietta McFarlane, Columbia Radio News.
Welcome back. This is Uptown Radio. I am V Tran. The city of New York has agreed to settle with protesters at the Black Lives Matter protest in 2020. Each of the approximately 300 plus victims who say they were mistreated by the police would receive more than $20,000. Martin Stoller, a civil rights attorney, says the settlement is significant. He says this is the first case where plaintiffs in a civil rights class action lawsuit would receive that much money.
Well, it's a very significant decision because it means that the city and the police department have acknowledged that there is a problem with how they acted on June 4th. The police department's conduct was correct or incorrect. The city decided to settle the case because they thought that they would lose the case. And the amount of the settlement is what makes this case extremely significant. It is, as far as I know, the highest per individual settlement ever obtained in a class action civil rights case.
You had mentioned earlier that the city would settle because if this goes out to a trial, a jury may decide with a larger amount. Would it be the reason for the city to settle that they pay less money now and not really an admission of guilt?
Well, this is what is known in civil litigation as the risks of litigation. That is, a plaintiff or a defendant in a case weighs what they think the evidence will show a jury and weighs how likely it is that they think that they could prevail with a jury. The risk is always there that you could lose on both sides.
So this would be the decision-making for negotiation from both sides. It may not be an admission of guilt, but it would just calculate negotiation from both sides.
Well, it is not an admission of guilt, but the size of the settlement and the amount of money that the city is willing to pay to avoid the risks of litigation is significant.
You mentioned it is a large amount payout per person. That would be like over $20,000 each. There are a few hundred of the protesters. So the amount the city would spend is about $6 to $7 million. But, the NYPD's budget is billions of dollars a year. Would you think it would just be a drop in the bucket that they willing to pay this amount?
Well, one of the problems with civil rights litigation is that the judgment is against the city of New York. And that means that the taxpayers wind up paying the cost of the judgment, as they will do in any case where there is police misconduct and there's a successful lawsuit for police misconduct. Here, there's a successful lawsuit for police misconduct. It comes out of city budget. It does not come out of the police department's budget, even though it should. It should be a penalty, could come out of their budget. That might cause the police department to act a little more in line with the Constitution than they do now. But that is not the case. That is not the case.
Do you think the settlement may encourage other people to sue and get payment from the city?
Well, there are a large number of people who already are suing over this June 4th protest. It's not only these people, there were several other people who were also arrested or detained. Plus, there are a large number of lawsuits for the for all of the Floyd protests, where the police department was acting unconstitutionally and arresting larger numbers of people.
Yes, those are the lawsuits that came out from this incident, or the incidents regarding the George Floyd matter. But how about other people who have problems with the police? And would you think they also be more tempted to sue the police after the settlement?
Yes, I certainly think so. I mean, knowing that a judgment is possible, if they have a legitimate case of police misconduct, then they are entitled to sue the police, because the police don't conduct themselves in accordance with the law all the time. That's why we have something like the Civilian Complaint Review Board to review civilian complaints, which are non-monetary. And then we have lawsuits, both in state court and federal court, for wrongful arrest and for wrongful conduct by the police department.
Martin Stoller, civil rights attorney, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
It's been a bad year for the retailer Macy's. They reported earnings today, and holiday season sales were disappointing. But it's not all doom and gloom for the iconic New York store. They have a plan to bring back shoppers. Thomas Copeland reports on his first ever trip to Macy's.
Okay, so let's take a look at the floor plan.
The Macy's in Herald Square is the largest store in the US.
Women's fashion stretches across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
well
6
over
floors,
2 million
13.
square feet.
Okay, that's a lot. All I'm actually after is just a nice shirt. So I think I'm gonna go to the 5th floor.
And even when you think you found the right floor, it's easy to get lost.
Oh, okay, so that's lingerie. So I think I'm in the wrong place. Okay.
Shopping used to be all about the adventure. Spending hours and getting lost was part of the fun. But now, people can buy online in minutes. And Macy's is under pressure. The retail giant's fourth quarter results were released this morning, and there's no shortage of bad news. Net sales, gross margin, net credit card revenue, all down. I notice the problem at Herald Square. As I walk around, I see very few shoppers.
Can you find your way around easily?
We get lost sometimes, and we work here, so it's like kind of...
work here.
You work here and you get lost here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
I just refuse to go on the other side because I'm scared to get lost.
That's Amanda and Brian. They're off work, but they point me in the direction of some nice shirts, and I head off. Shoppers today don't want a treasure map to find new socks. Macy's has a plan to make it easier to get around. They've launched a new set of smaller stores called Market by Macy's, a fifth of the normal size, and you can find them inside shopping centres. The idea is that Market by Macy's stocks curated products and uses data to adapt each store to the local consumer. These mini Macy's have already done well. In today's investor call, CEO Jeff Jennett said sales in these stores are up 8% with twice as many visitors.
It's attracting a new raft of customers. It's helping the digital business in those zip codes. We're going to be launching new ones in 23, and by the end of the year, we are hoping for a scalable model.
Macy's have shuttered 80 large locations since 2020, but they've actually opened 8 Market by Macy's at the same time. Some analysts are not convinced. Steve Dennis consults with retail companies and wrote about Macy's new strategy.
They started 20 years late. Everybody knew traffic was moving away from the malls. And, they're going to need 1,000 of these stores to be competitive.
And Dennis also questions whether the off-mall stores will really attract new customers.
I think what it's doing is it's just bringing, for the customer that really likes Macy's, they're just going to transfer business from the mall stores to the off-the-mall stores. But had they not done it, they would continue probably to lose more market share. So they're going to spend a lot of money to basically hold serve.
Macy's is forecasting another drop in sales for 2023, as many retailers predict people are going to shop less. Dennis says that's when we'll see if Macy's can really get bigger by getting smaller.
I don't think it stands any chance of working over the long term. I mean, they sort of have to do it to me, it's a defensive strategy. It's only when the tide goes out that you know who's been swimming naked.
I, for one, remain fully clothed, because back at Macy's, I finally found the men's department, picked out a basic purple t-shirt, and added to Macy's future earnings. $9 at the register.
Thanks very much. Okay, let's see if I can find the way out. Thomas Copeland, Columbia Radio News.
New York City homeless youth are dealing with new restrictions on where they can sleep. A new order from the Department of Youth and Community Development is trying to stop the young people from sleeping at drop-in centers. Izepa Macias reports on how this is affecting the people who have to enforce the rule.
Throughout the city, there are 8 youth drop-in centers. They serve homeless youth from the ages of 18 to 24. They provide hot meals, showers, clean clothes, referrals to other programs, and before the mandate, they were a safe place to close your eyes, maybe take a nap. But now, the city says that homeless youth aren't allowed to sleep in the drop-in centers. Jamie Pavlovich, the executive director of Coalition for Homeless Youth, says the new mandate is already creating problems.
What we hear is happening right from the providers, and it is consistent, is one, we're seeing a decline in young people accessing services at the drop-in centers, which is very concerning. Where are they going, right? The entire reason why these models were expanded to 24 hours was that young people did have a safe place to go and be inside overnight.
Pavlovich says providers are getting mixed messages from the Department of Youth and Community Development, leading to a lot of confusion.
They've even said in different meetings, like, it's okay if young people are laying down with their eyes closed as long as they're not on cots. And then in other meetings, they've said, no, the minute a young person closes their eyes, staff need to wake them up.
City officials have stated that these centers will continue providing all the same services, but they're not technically shelters, so they can't allow people to sleep overnight. Providers were ordered to remove all cots, recliners, and any other bed-like furniture that may encourage resting. Despite pushback from homeless youth advocates, the city has stated that these centers legally cannot operate as overnight shelters. So where should young people sleep? The shelter system gets tricky between the ages of 18 and 25. If there's room, you can stay in a youth shelter, or you could be sent to an adult shelter. But many homeless youth worry about their safety. Lyndon Hernandez is 25, and he has been in and out of homeless shelters since he was 18. He remembers one particular adult shelter.
But I met a lot of people while I was in that shelter, like grown men that have done really dangerous things. You know, they've killed people. Some of them have gotten out of jail. Some of them are drug addicts. So it's a very vulnerable situation for somebody so young.
Hernandez says that by not allowing a young person to rest in these drop-in centers, it's like taking away a basic need, which negates the entire point of the drop-in centers.
This is becoming a deterrent for young people to want to engage in services and want to go to drop-in centers, because drop-in centers are meant to be safe havens for them to get all of their basic needs met. And if one is not being met, it's putting young people at harm. Like, young people are sleeping on subways. They're sleeping in abandoned buildings, in parks, because this directive does not allow young people to sleep overnight in drop-in centers.
Providers, meanwhile, have been asking for more guidance and clarification about the new no sleeping mandate. They want young people to know that while they are working on the problem, the drop-in centers are still open and still a safe place to get help. Izepa Macias, Columbia Radio News.
And now, a mini profile in our series, A Slice of the City.
I kind of fell into musical theater, but that was my biggest career.
Former Broadway actress, singer, and dancer, Janice Mason.
My first Broadway job was Starlight Express. Then I did Grease for 5 years, and then I did a stint of Dreamgirls on tour, and yada, 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 yada. One night, I just thought, I really can't see. I can't get on stage. I can't get off stage. Although I'm not completely blind, I'm just visually impaired. There just came a time where I said, before you hurt yourself, I think you better just let it go and It was stressful. It was traumatic. It was, all those things that you have to go through, leaving something that you love. It's emotional. It's emotional.
You're listening to Uptown Radio, Thursdays at 4.
New York's film industry is undergoing a change. The Screen Actors Guild has released recommended standards for training intimacy coordinators, or ICs. An IC serves as the point person between actors and the production team. They ensure that actors film their intimate scenes safely and with consent. But, as Elizabeth Erb reports, because the job is new, ICs are facing several challenges on their own on set.
In Netflix hit romance Bridgerton, lead actress Phoebe Dynevor stands in a dimly lit room. Her powder blue satin dress catches glimpses of light as fire crackles in the background. She whispers her burning desire to her love interest. I burn for you. Her lips quiver as she leans in for a kiss. Actors used to be left up to their own devices when filming intimate scenes, as Dynevor tells Glamour UK.
I've done sex scenes in the past and it's all just like, action, go, just do it. And you feel very out of control when that's happening. But with a coordinator on set, we blocked everything, we rehearsed everything like a fight scene, and actually it really frees you up.
Things changed with the Me Too movement. When Bridgerton was shot, someone like Christina Arjona would just be a few feet away off camera. Arjona is one of only a handful of intimacy coordinators approved by SAG. She says she wants to make things easier for actors in potentially awkward situations. But she's finding that the industry is still getting comfortable with her.
Because we're still new, I still go on sets and I'm explaining my job to people. And people are nervous around us. They think we're the sex police, that we're HR, all this stuff. And it's like, no, I usually say, I'm like a stunt coordinator for intimate scenes.
At least 75 hours of training are required to be on the SAG Intimacy Coordinator Registry. You have to be trained by someone who's worked 200 days as an intimacy coordinator on set. But even with this new crop of trained professionals, Arjona says the use of intimacy coordinators is still not standardized.
We don't have a union yet. We're still working on that. And so part of it is we are highly, highly recommended on SAG shoots, but we're not required. HBO is the only studio that's agreed that we'll have an intimacy coordinator on anything that needs it. And we were like, yay! And then nobody followed suit.
Some new protocols have been implemented by SAG to create what they say are safer sets, like a rule which mandates that actors have 48 hours notice before they film an intimate scene. But Arjona says these rules aren't enough on their own.
Do you find a lot of actors just don't know that these protections exist?
Most actors. I'm trying to teach actors and young filmmakers and everybody of you have these rights that are here to protect you, but if you don't know it, you can still get pressured into stuff. I don't know that I've worked with an actor who knew all their rights already.
So far, 7 training programs around the world have received accreditation from SAG, including one here in New York. But Brooklyn-based actor Parnia Ayari is wary of this decision. She's a member of Intimacy Coordinators of Color and says the program's cost, which can be upwards of $5,000, leaves marginalized communities out.
There's a huge accessibility problem in these certification programs. What we're going to do to fix it, I'm not sure. Requiring certification when the certification is so inaccessible, I don't think that's quite the answer.
Because the position is so new, intimacy coordinators are still only credited as additional crew. While she waits for the industry to catch up to her, Christina Arjona is off to her next set, Miller's Girl, starring Jenna Ortega and Martin Freeman, a film focused on a teacher and his student. She hopes the production team will be receptive. Elizabeth Erb, Columbia Radio News.
That's it for this edition of Uptown Radio. We hope you enjoyed the show. Our executive producer today was Trisha Stortz. Leading our staff of reporters was senior producer Valentina Zarin Martinez. Director Izapa Macias coordinated our studio production team. Our producer Elizabeth Erb led our copy team and assisted in the studio. Henrietta McFarlane delivered our local newscast, and day reporter Thomas Copeland brought you the latest on the ground in New York. Our instructors Sally Herships, Robert Smith, and Lydia McMullen-Laird advised our staff. I am V. Tran. Uptown Radio is live Thursday at 4. Until next time, you can always find us at uptownradio.org. From all of us here at Uptown Radio, thanks for listening.